from the Mandera South Member of Parliament, that is Honorable Abdul Haro. And this particular question is on the establishment of civil registration centers in every sub-county in the country. That question is on the outstanding warrants of arrest from Kagumo Police Post against a certain individual. This particular question was raised by Honorable Joseph Gitari, the member for Kirinyaga constituency. The emergence of criminal gangs or groups affiliated to terror groups in the country is another question that Honorable Professor Kithure Kindiki will be expected to answer or to respond before the floor of the House tomorrow. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, is in the chambers this afternoon. I now hand over so you can follow up on the live proceedings. Enjoy your viewing.
Mheshimiwa, na tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, tukusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tukuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na tujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umesikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Honorable members, we have quorum to transact business. This is a good start after the recess. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
I wish to welcome you back from the short recess. I hope that you have had the opportunity to interact with your constituents in order to get fully seized of the priority issues of concern requiring the attention of this House. It is also my expectation that the short break availed sufficient time to committees to conclude several matters that had been committed to them, such as vetting of nominees for various state appointments and consideration of bills, and are now ready to present such business 2013 and 2015, after which he left to take a stab at politics. Honorable members, can you take the nearest available seat? The nearest available.
So timely. And I also want to add that it's unless this country decides and have more ways of producing power. Otherwise, the electricity bills is going to skyrocket because we have no any other way apart from the hydro way of producing power. We have several, but it is not so well managed. For instance, the solar, we have an authority called REREC, which is supposed to be managing green power and helping us to produce an extra power and probably synchronize it to the main grid. But if you look at the production levels, it is not enough for this country to consume to the level that we are able to minimize our bills. There is a lot of effect due to these high bills in this country, electricity bills, because when we depend mainly on the hydro, it means we can only produce enough when there is enough rains. That automatically affects even our productions in industrialization or industries. to the extent that every product that is being produced in Kenya today is so much expensive, and you are not able to produce more because of the cost. Even the cost of living. Like in my house, if I have 3 or 2 gadgets that I'm using electricity, like ironing and water pumping or something like that, it's going to cost me so much. And considering that there's a very high cost of living, electricity in this country must be managed by all means. And we should develop many other ways of producing power. And I encourage the government to look into it through the Ministry of Energy, that we also need to produce more wind power, tap into it, synchronize it into main grid, produce more of geothermal, and make sure that Kenyans are also getting value for the money they are paying for. Because it is one thing for all of us to be using this power, and it's another thing for all of us also to be struggling to survive because of the high cost of electricity bills. I want to say this is something and discussion that must be brought forward, and the ministry should take up the challenge by making sure that the electricity cost is brought down by all means. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Andrew Akuome, member for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I think what we are discussing today is very important in the sense that nearly the last 2 weeks in Kenya has been a week of discussing the cost of living. And this high cost of living is partly caused by the cost of energy. Madam Speaker, the high tariff we have has a lot of negative effects to our economy and to the people living in Kenya. We all know that the cost of business and the cost of manufacturing has gone up so much that the prices must also respond to that high cost of electricity. Madam Speaker, let me say that because of this high cost of business and production, in particular manufacturing, a number of business people and industrialists have migrated from Kenya going to other countries with a very dangerous result that causes us to lose employment and indeed cause us to transfer employment, the potential employment we would have had in our country, to the other countries. I think it is important that all efforts must be made to reduce the cost. And because of this, I highly support the motion. And I had one of my colleagues referring to illegal connections. That's a direct result of the high cost of electricity. If you want electricity and it is purposely made impossible for you to get it, you are a human being, you will do all possible to get it. And those who are having illegal connections are doing so because they want to live like any other person. Madam Speaker, let me also just draw your attention to the independent producers of electricity. I begin to wonder whether these people are useful to Kenyans in the manner we expect and in the manner they supply their energy to the national grid. We are told that these people are paid very highly, but do they have that payment commensurate with what we get from them in terms of the energy they add to the national grid. It is important they are investigated in relation to their cost and their benefit to this nation, because this could be part of the cost of the high tariff we are paying, because the energy producers or the energy giver, KPLC, need to recover their costs. Madam Speaker, I highly support the bill, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this bill.
The Honorable Stephen Mogaka, member for West Mugirango. Doesn't seem to be there. The Honorable,
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this humble opportunity to contribute to this motion. And I thank the member who has brought this motion at a very timely moment. And on behalf of the people of West Mugirango, I want to support. Madam Speaker, electricity or energy is everything. It's the driver of our economy. And unless the cost of energy is stemmed, then the cost of production and consequently the cost of living will not be affordable. To achieve this, it is indeed important that we evaluate the production chain to ensure that there are no leakages and there is no hemorrhage which is transferred to the ultimate cost of electricity. And it is true that Kenya Power, being a monopoly, has been entering bilateral agreements with independent power producers and prefers purchasing the expensive energy first at the expense of the cheap and clean green energy that is generated by the geothermal, by KenGen, and even wind power. The Ministry of Energy, Madam Speaker, needs to rise to the occasion. We cannot be relying on hydro, which was brought to this country during the colonial era. And fortunately, Kenya sits at the equator where we enjoy 12-month sunshine. And it is real important that we consider as a country to do a radical shift from relying on hydro only and lay emphasis on solar energy. So much so that we also need to amend the construction laws of this country so that we make every unit that is constructed to have a provision for a sufficient solar panel that will provide sufficient energy for that household, as well as release the excess of that energy to the national grid. We must migrate from relying on these giant power producers in this country and go towards a small-scale power production where every household harvests energy using solar panels, utilizes what they need, and sells the excess to the national grid, so that we convert our current energy consumers from consumers to producers of energy. And it is really important that a country that is now 60 years old needs to look for ways of raising very cheap energy for driving the economy. Madam Speaker, if you notice, we have a crisis, particularly in the rural areas. From the West Mugirango, where I come, there has been a large-scale theft and vandalization of power transformers. And why is this happening? There obviously is a market for the oil within the transformers, as well as a market for second-hand transformers. And who are the consumers? I suspect that some of these illegal stolen transformers and oils are being recycled back and sold again to the very people who are supposed to procure new transformers, and therefore the cost of all this is still transferred to the poor consumer. Whatever it takes this country, Madam Speaker, to reduce the power and energy tariffs, it needs to be done. I support and thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity.
The Honorable Bensouda.
Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, I want to make my contribution on the motion that has been brought by Honorable Jane Gigiri on reduced cost of electricity. I think there is no shortcut about this. This is quite critical. This is quite urgent. This is quite clear that it needs to be looked into with all stakeholders who are in this field, beginning with the Managing Director of Kenya Power. And I want to call upon strongly the committee which deals with energy to call upon all of them who are involved in this so that the country Kenya is brought to the right cost of living. I want to say that normally when we are in Parliament, first of all, the contributors whom I've listened to have talked about industrialization in regard to the effect or the impact that the cost of increased electricity has in production. They've also talked about the investors who are in the country who may not continue with their investment because of the high cost of living. I want to make my contribution in support of reduced cost of electricity on the following facts. 1, in terms of security, 2, in terms of education, 3, in terms of human resource, 4, in terms of the local person, the Jua Kali artisan, the economic enterprises that we have in our counties. And when I'm talking now, I'm talking specifically to Homa Bay County. We know that there are issues that are there which are not addressed. We cannot be talking of a country of continued increased amount of cost on various things without looking or addressing the prerequisites that are underlining to what is causing the problem. In terms of the Jua Kali artisan, the increased cost of living, has Kenya Power tabled? Have they made known the reasons as to why the cost of electricity continue going high? As a country, was to ensure that there is sustainable economic empowerment of our youths. That cannot be realized. I'm looking into the person who is the barbershop, the kinyozi boy, who wants to be empowered through what he's doing. Yet the units that he gets once he purchases is too high. Are we going to realize what we are talking about, youth empowerment? It is crazy. I look into the fishing industry. The people who are able to afford the big trucks and they bring the ice in coolers, we are able to produce this at our local areas. And so the cost of electricity must go down. I'm looking into the education sector, where we are talking about competency-based curriculum. The children here in gallery, not all of them are equal to those in the rural areas. There are some areas we are talking of going digital. We are talking of a digitalized economy, ICT. How are you going to realize this? The Education Committee equally should investigate and know what is the cost of electricity that the schools, primaries and secondary schools are meeting. Is it affordable? Is it sustainable? These are questions to ask. I'm talking about in terms of security. If we do not have adequate electricity across the country, whether we have the guns, whether we have the tear gas, when the electricity is not there for operation, this cannot work. I'm talking about motivation of the human resource employed under the Kenya Power. It will take days for you to reach Kenya Power so that there are connections. Why do we talk of increased costs while the jobs that are supposed to do are not well managed? I'm saying the management of Kenya Power should up their game. If there's a problem with the transformer, does it mean that they don't have field officers to establish before we report to them? What is it that there is a gap? So I'm saying in the management issues also, let us address the real issues. Let us at all costs plus the means and sustained provision of energy is realized. Otherwise, at this rate, we are just going to tell Kenyans we have failed as leaders, we cannot sustain, that industry cannot move, and nothing can happen. Water is life, and so energy is life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable
Answer and find out what are the issues. We need to interrogate the bill. When you receive a bill, an electricity bill, there are so many costs, so many taxes. What efficiency? Efficiency is a very important. What efficiency? Efficiency is a very important component of management. The more inefficient you are, the higher your cost of management, the more overheads. The more inefficient you are in terms of procurement, the more the costs are. But the question is, when these costs of management, poor management come in, who bears the cost? It is the consumer of power that bears the cost. So when we put a management, two words, being effective, being efficient, have different meanings. You can be very effective, but not efficient. Because you can produce what we want and the quality we want, but you might do it at the highest cost. You are being effective, but you're not being efficient. And that is the problem that we have at Kenya Power. Some of the management decision of power without looking at the efficiency level that is required. Madam Speaker, this is something that the committee needs to do. Investigate, do an inquiry at Kenya Power to understand the efficiency level. At how much, what is the cost of one mega unit, 1 unit of power? What is the real cost? The real cost, you know, there could be just cost and the real cost. What is the real cost? In terms of the most efficient production. I read that there are other IPPs that produce power, sell power up to Kenya Power at 30 cents, others sell at 150. Why would that happen? Why would that happen? Why would others be paid more money than others, and yet who bears the cost of all this is still the consumer? So we have higher energy costs in this country, and we must look at it. Again, looking at leveraging on what the Honorable Jen Kagiri has said, investigations must be carried out. Is power generation costs. Power generation costs. There are many IPPs, independent power producers in this country. They have power contracts. They are reaping a lot of money. A lot of money. They are making a lot of money. But as they make a lot of money, the person who buys this power and evacuates it and gives it to the people has to pay for that cost. Eventually, the cost will come back to the common mwananchi there. The kinyozi that my friend Bensuda was talking about, the pumping for water, and all the other things. It is about how much money Kenya Power buys the power from the IPPs. Madam Speaker, we must have a paradigm shift in the management of power in this country. We need to have a fresh look, and this motion is timely. With the rising cost of living in this country, we need to look at everything and we need to move away from where power supply, if I want to supply power, it is at the realm of the supplier and not the demand. That because I'm producing power, I must sell, and I want to sell at my cost. And somebody on the other end actually agrees to buy the power at the whims of the person selling, at the price that he wants. Madam Speaker, the moment we reduce the cost of buying power from independent power producers, the cost of power in this country. Madam Speaker, one of the things that we need to look at is a new economic architecture in this country. We have taken loans so that we can produce power. Huge loans. These loans must be paid for with high interest, bought at the dollar. Now, when this is done, the cost of everything of living in this country, because the person who produces maize meal, person who produces unga, uses power to produce that. If the cost of power is high, that cost will be loaded on the unga. If the cost of processing milk, when you want to process milk, you want to use power. The cost of milk will go high because power cost is high. If you want to build, cement manufacturers used power. And if we have to look at the development index of this country, probably one of the things that we need to look at is construction, the construction industry. But if there is higher cost in the construction industry because cement is produced at higher cost because of the power tariffs, it will even be difficult to own property in this country. So, Madam Speaker, what I would like us to do and urge the committee and to leverage on this motion that the Honorable gracious Lady Jane has brought is, we would like to get into this House, Parliament, when that report is produced, Madam Speaker, we need to have it here. That's why my advice to the Honorable Jane, after we pass this motion, I would like to request you to bring into this House a request for statement by the minister or by the committee. You request, and it is the only one. You see, the motion is very good as it is, this motion, very good as it is. But you may not elicit any reactions or elicit a report. So, because this is a motion, it's just a motion. But I would like to ask you to move forward and bring in a request for a statement or a petition to this House so that at the end of the day we receive a report. And that report will be debated and decisions will be made by this House. And that is the only way you can take this motion forward. If you don't do that, and I do not know how effective, I probably need advice from the clerks, but I would say that we need something else so that we can have a report come to this House, so that this House can debate that report, and that report can be implemented by government, and if they don't have a government agency to implement. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Amina Mnyazi, member for Malindi.
Asante Madam Speaker kwa kunipatia fursa hii kuzungumza kwa niaba ya watu wa Malindi. Na mimi jambo la kwanza nataka nimshukuru dadangu Jane Kigiri kwa huu mswada wenye ambao ameweza kuuleta hapa. Mswada huu umeletwa hapa wakati mwafaka, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu ni wakati huu ambao Wakenya wengi wanalalamika kuhusu maisha yalivyopanda juu. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi natoka sehemu za Malindi. Na Malindi ni mahali ambapo sisi tunategemea sana masuala ya utalii. Na inanisikitisha leo hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, ninapozunguka Malindi na kuona hoteli nyingi ndani ya Malindi yetu zimefungwa. Na hawa wawekezaji ukiwauliza sababu ni kwa nini wameweza kufunga hoteli hizo, bei ya stima inakuwa ni sababu kubwa kwa nini biashara leo hii ndani ya Malindi, na niko na imani katika Kenya nzima, inakuwa ni shida kufanya biashara kwa sababu ya bei ya stima. Ukiangalia bei ya stima katikati yetu sisi, nchi ya Uganda, hapa ndani ya Kenya iko juu na imeweza kukimbiza watu saizi wanakimbilia katika nchi jirani ili kwenda kufanya biashara. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka niseme hivi, ukiritimba ama monopoly imekuwa ni donda sugu kwa masuala ya stima yetu hapa ndani ya Kenya. Ninavyokuambia Mheshimiwa Spika, ufisadi na ukiritimba ndio ambao unaleta ama unadhororesha masuala ya stima hapa ndani ya Kenya yetu. Ukiritimba tukiendelea nao na tusipoangalia jinsi nyingine ama namna nyingine ya kuweza kupata stima, watu wetu bado sisi wataweza kwenda kuteseka. Mheshimiwa Spika, ufisadi nao pia si jambo ambalo tunaweza tukalisahau, kwa sababu kuna watu ambao leo hii wameitisha transformer mwaka ama miaka miwili na ndani ya Malindi bado hawajaweza kupata. Wale ambao wanapata huduma kama hizo za transformer pale ndani ya KPLC, ni lazima uwe unajua watu, ni lazima uende ukahonge pesa ndio hizo transformer zipate kutoka, wananchi waweze kutumia. Na hii ni ngumu Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu wananchi wanalipa ushuru na wanahitaji stima ili waweze kukidhi mahitaji ya maisha yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi kabla sijalipwa mshahara, mimi kama mbunge nilinunua tokens pale za shilingi 500. Na hili ni jambo lingine ambalo ni lazima
tuangalie sisi kama wajumbe na kama serikali ni jinsi gani ambavyo tunaweza tukasaidia watu wetu. Katika ile shilingi 500 nilioilipia ya kununua stima, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni shilingi 188 peke yake zenye ambazo zimekwenda kununua token. Na katika hapo nimeweza kupata token 24 peke yake, Mheshimiwa Spika. Ina maana ya kwamba shilingi 318 zote zimeenda kwa charges ama kwa vitu venye ambavyo mpaka leo ama dakika hii mimi, Mheshimiwa Spika, sielewi. Katika ile shilingi 312 tunajua kuna ushuru wenye ambao ni shilingi 58.16. Kuna jambo ambalo linaitwa fuel energy 175, forex charge shilingi 47, IPRA charges 0.73, WRA 0.26. Mheshimiwa Spika, inflation adjustment watu wanachajiwa shilingi 20.76. Kwa hivyo yule Mkenya, yule mama mboga pale chini, uwezo wake yeye labda ni shilingi 500 kila wiki. Shilingi 500 unaponunua nayo token, haupati token ya 500, shilingi 188 peke yake ndio zinatumika kwa kununua token. Shilingi 312, Mheshimiwa Spika, zinaenda kwa matumizi tofauti tofauti yenye ambayo sisi kama Wakenya hatujajua umuhimu wake. Viongozi wenzangu, saizi sisi tunapambana na hali ngumu ya nchi yetu ya Kenya. Ni lazima tukae pamoja, tuweke vichwa pamoja, tuangalie ni jinsi gani venye ambavyo tunaweza kunasua watu wetu kwa hizi shida zenye ambazo wanapambana nazo, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hayo machache, na muunga mkono dadangu Jen. Hivi leo umeweza kuleta mswada huu, na usimalizikie hapa. Kama ni watu wa KPLC, ni tuwafate na tuwaulize na watueleze ni vipi na ni kwa nini haya mambo sisi ambao tunapambana nao kama Wakenya yanakwenda vile ambavyo yako. Na sisi hatufurahiki. Tunataka tulete mabadiliko. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa. I'd like to recognize in the presence of Mirera High School from Naivasha constituency, Nakuru County, seated at the Speaker's Gallery. I also recognize Kimutua Secondary School from Machakos Town constituency, Machakos County, seated at the Speaker's Gallery. I also wish to recognize, seated in the public gallery, the following schools: St. Bakhita Kiburia Girls from Kirinyaga East Constituency, Kirinyaga County. Secondly, Sitam Schools, Ngong from Kajiado North Constituency in Kajiado County. Thirdly, Dr. Livingston Primary School from Makadara Constituency, Nairobi County. And lastly, Nyangati Secondary School from Mwea East Constituency in Kirinyaga County. I think the time for debate is now over. It was 55 minutes. I'd like to call for the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, because of the interest that members have shown in this motion, I will donate 2 minutes each to Honorable Irene Joki, Honorable Richard Kilel, Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, and Honorable Fatuma Full Network. 2 minutes each.
Honorable Joki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Jane, Honorable Jane, for bringing this motion. I rise to support. I rise to at least try and offer a few solutions that we can be able to reduce electricity costs in this country. And one, I had my colleague talking about charges in her bill of Warma. I want to request KPLC to check on double counting on Warma charges to stop charging non-catchment areas. I want to request the Ministry of Energy to look into the quality performance of some of these IPPs. I am privileged to at least host 3 of these contractors, and it is very embarrassing when we were with the CS Churchill to note that some of them were given these contracts in 2013 and they have not been able to achieve that. And if they were able to achieve that, I can assure you we'll be having 105 megawatts of electricity already generated for us and ready to be used by Kenyans. I also want to request KPLC, our Ministry of Energy, to look into lowering diesel-generated cost, whereby diesel-generated costs are taking a whopping 67 billion into their budget. We also need to utilize our geothermal plants, that is renewable energy, which one of my friends and one of my colleagues has talked about. We also request the ministry to look into also fast-tracking construction of substations where lines are ready to transmit electricity, but substations have not been done. Madam Speaker, I want to also request the ministry to utilize other parastatals which can be able to generate energy, and one of those is Kibo Sugar, which can be
Honorable Kilel, I think you
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the time that you have given me to contribute to this motion. I just want to support the motion that was brought by Honorable Jane Gakiri, which is intended to bring the cost of power down in the country. I want to suggest some ways where we can make that one possible. One of them is actually utilizing the sunshine. We encourage the use of solar panels in areas where we have enough sunshine. We also have areas which are wind areas, like Ngong, so we can also utilize the wind power generators. We can also make the cost lower, maybe by renegotiating the cost of purchase of power from the independent power suppliers, which we can make it lower so that we can transfer the benefit to the citizens of Kenya. Finally, Madam Speaker, streamlining the government generating companies like Kenya Power and KenGen. We can streamline them so that they can become efficient, and therefore they can do their operations in a very effective manner, and thus bringing the power down. So I stand to support the motion so that our people may get their...
Mwengi Mutuse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mwengi Mutuse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Jane Kagiri, for bringing this motion and for donating part of your time for me to make my contribution. I will make my contribution specifically on 3 issues. Number one, due to the high, as we look at the high cost of electricity, let us also look at the high cost of connection for new customers. Because in my constituency, I have seen customers, somebody has built a new home, the home is costing 400, 500,000, but when you apply to be connected by Kenya Power, you are given a quotation of 1.6 million shillings. Where do you get that money from? So as the committee seeks to look at the cost of electricity, let us just not look at the bills, let us also look at the cost of new connections. This country has been treated to a policy that was called last mile connection, where people were supposed to pay 15,000 for new connections and were able to pay in installments, but that has not happened on the ground. So we need to look at the cost of installation. Number two, as we look at the cost of electricity, we also need to unravel the conundrum. Customers are saying, Kenyans are saying that the cost of bills is very high. But Kenya Power, that is charging them and we are paying them religiously, is also registering losses. Every other time their financial statements are saying the company is making losses. Where is the money going to? The simplest answer and simplest imagination by any fair-thinking person is that the industry, the energy industry, must have been captured by cartels, and we must bring down the cartels so that the energy sector operates for the benefit of the public, but not for the benefit of private profiteers. I support the motion.
The Honorable Member for Migori, Honorable Fatuma Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. More so, thank you, Honorable Jane Kagiri, for bringing this motion and for donating your time to me. My points will be very clear. I have never understood also why, if, for example, I stay in Lavington, and you find in Lavington, your bill is different from somebody who stays in Githurai. And probably I live in Lavington on loans, but somebody in Githurai has a very big home, yet that person would pay a lesser bill than the person living in Lavington, and it goes further up to Runda and other places. I wonder what criteria they use to justify this. Again, you find when Kenya Power claims that they've made losses, they transfer the losses to the customers, who are us, but they don't transfer the profit to us. They would even put it that they made a loss of this amount and they distribute it equally. Now to the Githurai person, it will be shared equally to the person living in Runda. But when it comes to profit, it's purely theirs. So I support this motion, and I believe, God willing, we'll succeed in bringing this motion up, and then we bring the price of electricity down for the Juakali people to be able to do their business comfortably. I support.
We proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply as follows. First, Madam Speaker, allow me to thank the honorable members of this House for the overwhelming support they've shown to this motion. Madam Speaker, as I was seated here and during the last session and listened to the members, I could actually tell these are the people's representatives, because whatever they spoke about is what each and every Kenyan is experiencing on the ground, and that is why we are putting in an effort to ensure that the cost of electricity must come down. Madam Speaker, I picked a few points from the honorable members, and of course, when I was making my submission, I spoke of the deeds and misdeeds of KPLC. Today, a lot has been raised about the connection problem, where people apply for transformers and they have to know somebody for those transformers to be installed. During my research, Madam Speaker, I even got to learn that Kenya Power and Lighting Company connects people but doesn't install a meter. So these people have somebody coming around their houses to collect money every month, and those are the losses I was speaking about. Honorable Speaker, this is what we have to bring an end to and ensure that the cost of electricity in this country has to go down. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply. Honorable Speaker, pursuant of Standing Order 53.3, I request that you defer putting of the question to the following day.
Okay, Honorable Kagiri, your request is approved. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, development of policy and funding for junior secondary schools.
Honorable members, upon the request of the member, this particular motion is deferred.
Order number 11, motion, establishment of a national cancer prevention and control fund.
Honorable members, also on this motion, the Honorable Timothy Toroitich has requested for this to be deferred to the following week.
Order number 12, motion, development and implementation of a child care program for children whose parents are in lawful custody.
Again, this upon the request of Honorable Brighton Yego.
Order number 13, motion, national policy on the warming of school-going children.
Honorable members, also upon the request of Honorable Mashua Waithaka, this particular motion is deferred. Next motion.
Order number 14, motion, regulation of the betting industry.
The Honorable Duncan Mathenge.
Honorable Speaker, that aware that the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act, Cap 131, Laws of Kenya, provides for the regulation of the gambling industry, including the control of betting, rotaries, and gaming in the country. Further aware that there is an emerging trend of media houses offering, concerned that the trend was initially perceived as a harmless form of entertainment and audience engagement, but has since developed into a problem within our communities, leading to many Kenyans getting addicted to this form of gambling. That has led to lots of loss. Further concerned that there are numerous negative effects of this trend, including financial ruin, family breakups, high truancy in schools, resulting in high school dropout rates, and in some cases, target individuals who can least afford to lose money, mainly the elderly, the youth, and low-income earners. Cognizant that the government has the responsibility of protecting citizens from negative social trends, including gambling, and the proliferation of these games is a violation of the betting, rotaries, and gaming against the license that have been left at the hands of each and every Tom, Dick, and Harry who would want to exploit them by luring them into betting activities. The media houses, 14 of them are very notorious, Madam Speaker. It is therefore clearly a con game that the media houses are running on Kenyans.
The Honorable Speaker is a biological male person.
Roto Chojo, Shamge FM.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity so that I can support this motion being presented by Honorable Mathenge. And for sure, it is high time. We should try as much as we can to regulate some of these media houses because they are licensed with the communication people into betting, Mr. Speaker. And one of these bettings is that these people are not regulated and they don't even pay tax to the Kenya Revenue Authority. And you realize in the whole generations from 6 in the morning, as Honorable Mathenge has explained, to the evening, the only thing that they normally do is to lure people and the young people on how to bet. And sometimes because of 50 shillings, whereby the young people within our community can be able to, so probably because someone understands a station like Kameme FM, a stations like Inolo FM, because there is a lot of goodwill with the public outside there, then they take advantage of that goodwill without any regulations and tell us who are the registered owners of these pay bills, because some of the media moguls within our public, they're the one who are siphoning money from the public using the betting, Mr. Speaker. This has really played a major role with the young generation, because probably those people are not able. This betting has totally damaged families, because at the end of the day, the kid is given money to, a student is given money by the parents to go to their school, to go to pay for school fees, to go to pay for the exam, and because they believe that probably after you have made your bet, even this young generation commits suicide. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are calling out the betting activities within the media houses. If the work of the media is to air out of the board so that they can be questioned in the floor of the house, we never got any questions, we never got any answer from the Communication Authority of Kenya, and therefore I think it is high time we now move this motion, make sure that we are able to bring these people from the lockers where they have hidden themselves, who are these serious cartels that are playing with the minds of Kenyans within our republic, Mr. Speaker. These media houses, Mr. Speaker, they have, there is no way, and you realize that they target very small people and poor people within our community. You realize that 50 shillings or 30 shillings is something that maybe probably majority of our people within the community can be able to afford. But when you do it accumulatively, you will realize that these media houses are making a kill out of this betting, probably 10 or even 20 million within a day. But the amount of money that they are telling the people that this is a